Inside the Birds is back in Indianapolis. That's right. It's Geoff Mosher and Adam Caplan here from does Indianapolis have a nickname? Is it like the something city, the Circle City? I don't know. What is it?
It's funny. I'm staying in the Circle, but yeah, in that area.
It's got to have a nickname, right? I just don't know it.
Yeah, I don't either. I know, like Keystone State, Pennsylvania. We know that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it could be the Skywalk City because they have 1,000 of those, but didn't need any because the weather has been pretty nice and mild here in Indianapolis at the Combine. Now, Adam, if you remember the first time we did this from the Combine, our first ITB, we stayed. We weren't. Where were we? Yeah, I think I bunked with you that day or that week, and we had what we did was we moved a desk for those watching on YouTube laterally, right? We turned it so that the window was the background and the city. We had the skyline of the city in the background, and that was really cool. But we've evolved. So you're in a different room, I'm in a different room, and you know what? I'm for those who are watching on YouTube, you can sort of see a painting of the city in the background on my square. So that's about all we can give you. But we are here. We got a lot to talk about. The Eagles came here without an offensive coordinator and without a defensive coordinator, and officially announcing it, and that changed about within 24 hours. So we'll get into all the changes that the Eagles have made there on the coaching staff. We've got some updates on things for training camp. We have some just overall intel on how this new coaching staff came together and what to expect going forward. And that's going to be the majority of this pod. I know a lot of people want other stuff. I think we always have to tell people this time of the year, this is still a free agency time for Inside the Birds. I know everybody's hungry about the draft, and we are out here talking to people, but a lot of things still have to go on after the Combine. What a lot of personnel people do is, they see the times, the workouts, they go back, they may have to go back to the tape based on some things they observed with the workouts or the times, right? Or the interviews. Those and the medical reports are cardinal to what goes on here throughout the week. And sometimes those things can influence. You shouldn't really change your board too much because it's all about the season and tape. But medicals clearly, like Nakobe Dean, right, can clearly impact where a player is going to go in the draft. So that's why we wait until we get back, right? And then you get asked through free agency to really start talking about the NFL draft.
Yeah, it's the same process we always do. We don't start draft stuff until the third week of March. Free agency is very quick, typically in terms of the top part. It's usually 48 hours. It doesn't start on Wednesday that week. It starts on Monday. Most of the deals are done by Tuesday night. Then when the official start of free agency is on Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern, it's kind of ho-hum because all these top players are gone.
Right.
There's a joke in the agent community. If you don't have your deal done by Thursday, you're taking a discount. How crazy it is.
It is pretty crazy. And look, we'll talk about it later in the show, but Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman especially were really candid about what it looks like for them in free agency. We asked some really interesting questions of them. So did other Eagles reporters, and got some what I thought was really telltale and revealing answers, which you don't always get from the Eagles. But I think the reality that faces them with 20 free agents is, they can't really disguise what their intentions are too much here. And so we'll get into that a little bit. They basically know they're going to lose a lot of guys. And we've been talking about that going into it. The safety position is a big one for them because of CJ Gardner-Johnson and Marcus Epps. Both their safeties are starters. And the latest intel with Greg Cosell on the Inside the Birds platform came out this week. And, I've said this to you, Adam, it wasn't until in the middle of the show where we're on like our fifth guy with Cosell did I realize that, wow, this is a really deep class of safeties. I'm not saying all of the guys we talked about are Pro Bowl or all pro caliber players, but they can play in the league. They can give an impact to your team all the way down to, like the fifth or sixth guy that we were throwing at Greg. And he liked a lot of them, and to various levels, but he felt that they could all play and make a positive impact. So that's pretty interesting.
Honestly, other than Terrell Edmonds, I don't think he was. If you've heard the show already, it's the most positive Greg has been on any of our shows since we worked with him for 3 years, however long it's been. I think it's been 3 years.
Yeah,
at least. I was surprised after, like, I really like this group, save for a couple guys. Edmonds, I don't think he was knocked over for, But and then the great thing about it, because we had such a deep list, because look, the Eagles at some point, it's not just safety, it's other positions. Always remember, folks, free agency, it's not over in 3 days. The top part is, but there are bargains to be had. The later you sign players, the more of a bargain you get. And the Eagles have done very well in what I call the middle part of free agency. After the top part is done, they might sign somebody third week of March. They might do it after the draft, whatever the case may be. They'll find bargains. Kaiser White was a great bargain. Did a nice job for most of the season. That was a good find for them after many years of struggling with these one-year deals, as we've outlined many times. So, though, as you said, and it's pretty clear, boy, every interview Howie Roseman did, I must have heard 3 of them this week. I don't want to say he's excited to walk away from players. I don't want to mistake what he said, but what he did say is they know, as you said, they're going to lose players. But the part that he seemed to be enthused about is, okay, if that happens, they're going to get a lot of comp picks. He talked about having 3 first-rounders and over the next 2 drafts, this one, the next one, and so many comp picks coming next year when they walk away from some players, and he's expecting, obviously, the players they walk away from are going to get good deals. Obviously he can't say exactly who they are going to be yet. He doesn't exactly know, because this is part of what happens this week. In addition to gathering information on the college prospects, they're meeting with agents, and not more often than not, unless it's the top players. Like, they knew Byron Jones what the asking price was in 2020. All teams did, but middle of the road free agents, lower tier, sometimes you just don't know. High end guys you're going to know, because everybody's going to want them. Or most guys, whatever position they're looking for, they're going to want the top of the line market for that position.
Yeah, they will, and this will be no different. There are going to be a lot of free agents that play premier positions, whether it's Javon Hargrave on the defensive line, for example, or James Bradbury at corner. Just for an Eagles perspective, that those are positions that tend to do well in free agency, like really well, because that's what the league prioritizes.
Look at Hargrave. Look at Hargrave. $13 million on that Eagle he got from the deals. We were kind of like blown away, and obviously turned out to be a good move.
Yeah,
he gets another bite at the apple, which that's going to be an interesting one if he walks.
Yeah,
if he walks, which we'll have more next week, and obviously the Sunday before free agency starts, we'll empty everything we have. I don't want to say I'd be shocked if he returned, but I wouldn't surprise me if he walked either.
Yeah,
that's
no.
you
just made a great point. Hargrave got 13 a year for 3 years, and if you compare his stats before that contract to his stats since that contract, you could make an argument, if you took the age out of it, that he deserves twice as much, because he really wasn't that he was a good player in Pittsburgh, and that's why he did get that money. They knew he was he was a rotational player, though. He was not a starter, and he was certainly not a double-digit sack guy 3 straight years like that. So that's his market could be very volatile, and we're getting a lot of different information out here in Indianapolis on that. But it's a fascinating one, and that's what makes free agency really, really intriguing. And again, the safeties, just as I was mentioning before, some of the last safeties we talked about were Julian Love, Donovan Wilson, and Juan Thornhill, and those guys were impact players for their team. So interesting stuff from Greg Cosell. Make sure you check it out on our Inside the Birds platform, or whether it's YouTube or podcasts. We're working on our next series for Patreon. We have some names lined up for interviews, and our next Ask ITB live stream. We agreed last week that we would wait till we got back from Indianapolis so we can better answer questions and trying to force feed it in while we're out here and maybe being rushed. So stay tuned for that. Go ahead.
Yeah, let me add this on Patreon. So we've got an agreement here for next week. So the beauty of being out here, you never know you're going to run into. I'm not going to give it away, but we're barring unless the guy all of a sudden is not available, we're going to have it. It's our free agency preview with a former NFL GM who's going to take us through. Again, we've never done this. We've never had a GM to walk us through free agency and how you prepare for it.
Right.
How do you put together a board? Getting the cap people involved, getting ownership involved, how you get a budget from your controller, the controller from the business side, team president, what are these meetings like? This is some cool stuff. In fact, I talked with that guy on Wednesday, and he smiled. He goes, "Oh, okay. I see where you're going here. This will be fun." He goes, "I like this."
Yeah.
And I said, "Can we do it next week?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Unless something changes, he'll be able to do it next week. I cannot wait to do this."
Yeah, he saw where you're going. You want all the behind the scenes stuff. You
Yeah,
want to know where the
exactly.
bodies are buried. You want to know which, what happens when a GM says we need to have that player, and the owner and
Well,
the
the
controller
coach
say
does.
no, we don't have that, or the coach says that,
Yeah.
and then no, we don't have the money, or we don't. No,
Right.
it's really good.
Sure.
It's very interesting.
I've never, even when we had Joe Banner on, shame on us, we never really went through that. But it just dawned on me with free agency starting, and we want to be ahead of it for Patreon subscribers. And this guy's going to walk you through, and he knows the Eagles very well uh, from being in the league a while. So he knows how not only Roseman, but at the way they do Eagles do business. And I also happen to talk to a cap guy who he's still working for an NFL team, and the team this guy comes from, he goes, he admires Roseman and the guys who do the contract and how he signs players and whatever. There's a lot of respect for them because they're obviously very good. But he goes, look, we don't do option bonuses. We like to make the players earn it, go, by
Yeah.
year, by putting roster bonuses in, or you have to be on the roster at a certain point to get the money, kind of like the Seahawks do it, pay as you go. But he also said everybody does it differently. He added, you know what? How in the world could I argue with their success? Because they figure out a way to keep these players and not screw things up. They've really, other than the Wentz cap issue, because they were more or less forced to trade him based on the ugliness of the situation. You could come up with any term you want, so that crushed their cap. When is the last time the Eagles really had a cap problem?
No, an overall cap problem, not. But there have been, I would say, and I'm just bringing this up because you're asking. I'm certainly not trying to be negative about it, but because there have been like 90% hits and just a few misses. But like the Alshon, the second Alshon restructure that made them have to keep him on the team because of his cap number was terrible. Like, it was just terrible from the start.
I threw my hands up, like, why would you restructure a guy again who's got a major injury? I was incredulous.
Yeah.
I just didn't, like you said, it was ridiculous. It's just so rare for them to make that kind of mistake, because their bets on structures are almost always right, where other teams, oh gosh, we could go through other teams' mistakes where guys are older.
Yep.
Whatever, but no, they do such a good job. And I'll tell you this before we get started here, is that, because I know you and I like to do this when we talk Eagles with personnel people, general manager, whatever. One guy who's never, this is really interesting. I got this when I first got here. Said this personnel guy never liked Howie very much, but I guess he didn't. Whatever. He's dealt with him since he was the GM in 2010. He goes, I got to tell you, he loves how he completely changed his attitude from how he rebuilt his career after 2015. He said he has such respect for him. He looks at him differently because he thought how he needed to grow up when he first met him, I guess, in 2010, like that. And I was like, wow, okay. I said, I'm going to use this if you don't mind. He goes, absolutely. He goes, the guy said he's kind of envious of the way they do business.
Wow, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and look, you sure as hell couldn't say that only up to 15.
That's interesting.
And all this stuff.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was going to save this till the end of the show, or maybe even a different podcast, but it's been on my mind, and I'm just going to bring it out here and discuss it with you.
Sure.
I sort of get a vibe that how we talk about Howie's excellent ability to kind of correct mistakes and build something up, but then his sort of, I don't want to call it disability, but like he's even admitted it himself about his loyalty to older players and just his overall sort of difficulties had trying to sustain that success. Like, they are a peak and valley team under Howie. It just so happens that their valleys have been very short, right? But they've bottomed out a couple of times. And I feel like just watching him interact with Nick and listening to Nick and knowing what went wrong with Doug, which we went through quite a bit at the end, with the inability to develop and coach your own coaches and develop your talent. And sometimes kind of like, I think front office ownership Howie, they felt like they had to walk Doug through a lot of things, right? Or make these decisions where he would not. I don't sense that they feel that way about Nick. I sent, and then we're early. We're still year 3, which can be kind of early.
Yeah,
But Nick strikes me as
also,
someone who, first of all, one of our first observations with Nick was in his first training camp is he coaches his coaches. He's not afraid to do that.
yes.
He has his fingers on the pulse of things. He's energetic. We know that. He's exciting, but he's smart too. He knows what he's doing. I believe this, this whole thing, taking Sean Desai, as far as we understand it, that was Nick Sirianni's decision. So I feel like if Howie feels that his head coach can handle a lot of this stuff, then he doesn't have to get too involved, or he doesn't have to make decisions. And that's best for the organization when the coach is in charge of making the coaching decisions, the GM's just in charge of GMing and keeping that, front office in place. And it feels like it's good right now. I mean, I've been thought that before and it's backfired, but I feel like they're in a better place coming off this Super Bowl loss than maybe they were going into that first year after the Super Bowl, where things started to not go great for Doug, with his coaches and his offensive coordinator.
Yep, 2 things off that. The first one would be, I forget which former personnel guy we had told us this. I think off camera, he said that most, if not all, GMs have final say if they want to use it on with their the coaching staff, but he's not going to interfere unless he has to. He's not going to say, no, you can't have that guy. But typically, the head coach runs, hey, I want to hire this guy. Unless you object, they're going to hire, the head coach will hire him. That's because the GM is higher than the head coach, unless ownership says it's totally equal ground. That's just the way it works in the NFL. It's nothing uncommon. But as you said, I don't think Howie's going to say, no, you can't have that guy. There's been nothing, by the way, as you said, that we've heard there's any argument, or it's kind of been Nick's kind of run, but he's, unless the owner, it's more or less the way we've heard it for a decade. Unless the owner objects, and boy, we know he's gotten involved. Like we've the Athletics outlined it, we've outlined it when he's wanted guys out of it. It's unfortunate, but.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing, though, on your point, they've been so good in Sirianni's first 2 years. Why would anyone argue? If Nick wants anybody, he should get able to do whatever the hell he wants.
Yeah, right? It's a good point. It's a good point. And, I guess part of my opinion is shaped by expecting them still to be a good team. So if things go awry, then you have to kind of judge it and see what happens next. But right now, I just get a good sense that they're in a good place. And I think that's a good thing. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about some of the more pertinent news that comes out. First of all, you will be going. Well, no, you're not going. You went to Ohio last year. This time you probably will get to enjoy it with a far shorter car trip, because the Eagles and Browns will be having joint practices again, except this time not in Berea, Ohio, where you were last year, but right here. Well, not here in Indianapolis, but in Philadelphia at the NovaCare complex, which is good.
Yeah. Oh, so what Stefanski said, I was at his press conference on Wednesday. So what Stefanski said, the head coach of the Browns, that because they're in the Hall of Fame game, it'll be their second week of the preseason, but the third for the Eagles. So it'll be the Browns are in the Hall of Fame game week 1. The first week of the preseason, which is the only game, the Hall of Fame game, the official first week of the preseason, they play the Jets. Then the third week, they practice in Philly for 2 days, and they have their third preseason game. So it'll be the Eagles' second preseason game.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Yeah, I had no idea this was going to come out. I was like, okay, great. The good thing is, you said it'll be in Philly at the NovaCare complex, and I could tell you from talking to some of the people with the Browns this week, they thought that the Eagles were probably going to be a Super Bowl team. I'll tell you that. When they sold the Eagles for the 2 days and they were able to watch the practice tape, they were blown away. We probably said some of this when I got back, how they thought the Eagles roster was so good. But I guess when you watch the practice tape, you see the talent and the depth that the roster had, and which would bring this forward, because you wonder with Roseman and Sirianni, particularly Roseman being so open about losing players. I mean, you do wonder about the depth. What's the depth going to look like?
Mm-hmm.
But they also have the draft coming up too.
Yeah, and I just thought it's kind of funny that Kevin Stefanski is the one who announced it. It was like 2 days in a row, a different NFL head coach broke Eagles news. Pete Carroll followed by Kevin Stefanski. Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow?
Right, but so Pete Carroll goes on. He does his press conference. Says, "Well, Sean Desai's going to Philly."
Yeah,
and then we might as well get started there. So you asked Howie Roseman. You asked him at his press conference. Well, could you give the phrase? Because Howie's response was great. What did you say to him?
I said to Howie, and this was all good-natured banter. It was fine. I know it could be taken the wrong way if I don't give the right context. I said, Howie, Pete Carroll said that his coach Sean Desai is leaving to become the Philadelphia's defensive coordinator. Can you confirm what Pete Carroll said? And he said, well, I typically like to leave that to Coach Sirianni and wouldn't want to comment on that. And I said, well, you're not calling Pete Carroll a liar, are you?
No,
and he said, no, I'm definitely not calling Pete Carroll.
No, he said he wouldn't be lying. What did he say? He wouldn't be lying? Something like that.
I think he said, I'm not going to call Pete Carroll a liar.
Okay. Well, he definitely indicated his body language.
Yeah.
It's definitely, okay, this is happening. Then, so here's, so we're talking about Sean Desai, who is the assistant head coach / defense for the Seahawks. So this is a guy that they knew about because of his connection to Vic Fangio, who was obviously a friend of the Eagles. I say that because I laugh. Vic Fangio goes, he says in his press conference last week or whatever it was, after he was named the Dolphins defensive coordinator, explaining his relationship. Oh, I'm friends with Howie and Nick, so I would visit him from time to time, and I always thought that was funny. Yeah. Just happened to show up, no one care.
just a friend.
Anyway, we're cynical.
Dropping in.
Yeah, just drop. Hey, yeah, he's like the friend who wouldn't leave.
Right.
But the Saturday Night Live skit from like the 80s.
I know, I remember that.
But anyway, so Sean Desai gets hired. So here's the funny thing, folks. So we got kind of wind that this is going to happen. How did I leave? Tuesday morning, and I was like, okay, I think this is going to happen. So see this guy I recognize, on the flight 8 a.m. on Tuesday. I'm like, is that Sean Desai? So I go get my phone and I Google image his name and I'm like, that's Sean Desai. Like, what is he? So he had the interview yesterday on Monday in Philly. Mm-hmm. As we outlined, that the finalists were going to come to Philly to interview instead of doing Zoom. So he did his interview Monday and he was flying through Indy. And Denard Wilson was the other finalist. So I guess Wednesday, we had heard they just a size agent met with the Eagles and they hammered out the deal verbally. That's why they said they had an agreement. 1 hour later, they announced it. So, boy, it all kind of transpired because the GM's here, contract negotiators are here, the agent's here, the new DC's here. It's just funny how that all works out.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to think because of the time that you just mentioned involved, it seemed like it was done within an hour, that the offer had to be pretty good. The Eagles are known for paying. They will pay to have their coaches. Jeffrey Lurie is really good. Remember, this guy was he was associate head coach in Seattle. That's not a small title. We always talk about, forget the title. It's how you get somebody more money by giving them a title. So sure. For Eagles to be able to get him here to be their defensive coordinator, it had to be worthy for Sean. So
it did. In fact, we totally got a 3-year deal, and this is a good hire. I talked to John DeFilippo, former Eagles quarterbacks coach, friend of our program. Why did I talk to him? Because he coached with Desai in 2021. So I said, John, what do you remember? And he gave me some good background. He wasn't familiar with Desai until he got hired. We're very familiar. I mean, they all know it. Everybody knows each other. But in terms of not working before, and he said, you can only go by the practice and practice tape, because he didn't watch their defense, because he's watching the opponent's defense to prepare. He said that he made you earn it. That was his quote, which means he made the offense earn it. Don't forget, as he reminded me, Robert Quinn had 18.5 sacks under the side. And Travis Gibson, also had a break. I think that's his name. I think he had some of the stuff I was not aware of, and I was reminded of. I think Gibson had 7 sacks, but he was definitely running the Fangio defense then. He has some roots, obviously, with being with Seattle. They changed their defense this season a little
Mm-hmm.
bit. And he also had, yes, we're expecting, based on what we were told, to be more of the Fangio defense, but he's going to have a spin on it. It may not be the total thing. It might be some hybrid stuff thrown in there because of everyone he's worked for, who he's known. But yeah, it's not like he hasn't worked for any other people. In fact, he's got a background in offense too, which is interesting. That's what somebody reminded me of. So, and he's also a young guy, he's not even 40 yet. And we'll see how he does. But we're going to do another deep dive. We're going to talk to some other people who work with him. Actually, one assistant coach on defense that's worked with him, has known him. And then I talked to an NFL general manager this week who knows him personally. So he's one of the smartest coaches he's ever known, particularly younger coaches. And he's got a lot of respect for him. So that's good. It's good background. But again, he's only called plays for 1 year. You just don't know until he comes to your building. You don't know until he gets your players in terms of how he handles them and does he understand how to use them. I like that Quinn kicked ass, best year of his career, 18.5 sacks. That's a good sign, but it doesn't tell you everything. So let's see how it goes.
Yeah. So the one thing about Sean here is that I don't want to say he's walking into a buzzsaw, but he is walking into a situation where this defense is about to undergo some major transition. And it's good they got him in and they have him here. And they have to get to work quickly because, a couple of people I've talked to about the situation have said they got to figure out what his, like you said, he's a Vic Fangio guy. He's going to have elements of Vic Fangio's defense. You've brought this up many times. Not everybody runs the Fangio defense the same way, so he'll have his own spin on it. But you've got to make sure the pieces are in place for what he wants to do. In fact, someone brought to me, I'm not sure Milton Williams might be a starting caliber type player or exactly a specs type of player that fits Sean Desai's front. I'm not sure. He brought up a couple of other guys saying, how does it all fit? Does Javon Hargrave, are they trying to get him back? Would he fit what they want to do? So they have a lot of decisions to make there. He's clearly not, it's going to be very, very difficult for the Eagles to have, at least on paper, as good of a defense individually, right, and talented as they had last year because of all the departures. So he walks into that situation, and he also walks into a situation where there really hasn't been a defensive coordinator who has pleased the Philadelphia fan in quite a while. I mean, Jim Schwartz was like mildly accepted by the fan base, and the way it ended for Gannon wasn't good. And I did some research just on his 1 year as defensive coordinator, and it's not like he's that much different of a guy as far as blitz philosophy. I think he was 22.6 in his 1 year. That was his blitz rate, which was like 18th or 19th. It was just a little bit higher than what Jonathan Gannon ran in year 2 as the Eagles coordinator. We know in year 1, Jonathan Gannon was 31st in the league in blitzing. I mean, he never did it. Last year, Gannon upped it a little bit, heavily weighted by the first half of the season when he seemed to blitz more. But in 2021, the Bears blitzed on 22.6% of the snaps. That ranked 23rd. Last year, Gannon blitzed 22.1. So it's basically the same, maybe a little bit more on Desai's end. Some of the video I've seen of Bears defense under Desai, it looks like he's a little bit more of creative with the multiple front defenses and overloads and things like that. I've seen some wide 9 out of his structures on pass rushing downs. So now he has to get on page with like Tracy Rocker and Jeremiah Washburn, because those guys were doing something one way under Gannon, and he may want it done a little bit differently based on some of the things I just said. So there's a lot of work to be done here. But I would agree with you, Adam, that I think that it's a fair and good hire. He has play calling experience. You can't ignore that in the decision making that went on with Nick Sirianni when it came down to either him or Denard Wilson. And people have asked, is there collateral damage here? Is Denard Wilson on his way out? Is he unhappy? The Eagles made it clear that they know he's disappointed and they want him to stay. They said he's welcome to stay, meaning they want him. But when you say somebody's welcome to stay, what you're really saying is that right now it's in their head that they may not want to be there. So
Well,
we'll have to see what happens.
yeah, the guy beat him out is the DC, and he didn't get the job. It's I talked about this with Mike Gill on a show on I think it was Tuesday. Like that's something he's just going to have to get over. And this is not the only time this has happened.
Correct.
Now Steve Wilkes decided he didn't want to stay once Frank Reich got the head coach job, and he's now the D coordinator of the 49ers. And I know they wanted the Panthers really wanted Wilkes to stay as D coordinator, but he didn't, so they moved on.
Yeah. I mean, and listen, if it had worked out differently and Gannon had become a head coach before the Super Bowl and Vic Fangio was still hanging around, it's a good chance Vic Fangio would have been defensive coordinator if it worked out with the Eagles, and then Denard would have had to have accepted that too. So,
True.
I mean, you mentioned it, and someone in an organization said the same thing to me when I was talking about it. He said that person said, I've been passed up by an outsider for a job, but it's something that sucks, but you have to understand. And I think Nick made the best point of all when he said, because he was on record as saying, I'm passionate about developing my coaches and rewarding from the inside. But at the end of the day, you have to make the best decision you think for the team going forward. And clearly he felt that Desai and the resume and being a coordinator and doing the play calls and whatever else went into the decision was the best decision for the Eagles. And I think that's got to be first and foremost for anybody.
Yeah, it's just talking to teams about these decisions over the years. They I don't want to call it groupthink. They'll collaborate. They go, what do you think? What did you think? And it always comes down to this: no matter what's reported about who's a favorite, the reason why guys who are favorites don't get jobs is because of the way that they interview. I'm not saying Wilson did or didn't interview well. I'm just telling you the number one thing is how these guys interview. The best example I got many years ago with the Steelers when Russ Graham was supposed to take over as head coach, and they added Mike Tomlin late. He was maybe, I don't know, this is so long ago, I forget which number he was on the interview list. No one thought he had a chance. It was like an afterthought. He wound up getting the interview. He just nailed it. So sometimes some guys interview better. There are always reasons for it. Denard Wilson was the only guy really they considered. They did, as we reported a couple weeks ago, they interviewed Nick Rollis before he got the DC job with the Cardinals. But Wilson was the guy they really liked, and we had talked about for months he would be the most likely replacement if they stayed in-house. And again, he was a finalist, and you will never truly know what Desai did better than Wilson. Only the people involved knew or know. But Wilson's an excellent DBs coach, and they're all paid well. And remember, as we noted, when they hired him, the Jets thought they were keeping him. They really wanted him to stay, so he's really good at his job.
Right. So hopefully for the Eagles, he does stay, because I think you just made a great point that he's done it's been a long time since you and I, first of all, first time in the history of ITV, long time for the Eagles that we've had this good of a secondary to talk about. I like not even close for as far as ITB history. There's no comparison. This was the best secondary that they've had. I mean, they did have a good one in 17 with at safety. They were great with Rodney and Malcolm, but they really, and nickel corner, they were great with Patrick Robinson, but they were really scratching and clawing on the outside with Goblin, with Ronald Darby, who was hurt for 10 weeks, with Jalen Watkins, was it? Who was still getting in there sometimes.
Yeah,
and
right.
Rasul Douglas. And I was just, this was their best.
This is like, who knew Gardner Johnson would be this good?
Right.
Who knew? Particularly he had to learn the defense in season.
Yep.
So that's pretty much it. Decides the guy. And now we move on to offense, and also the assistants who were, two guys got promoted, one guy got moved from defense to offense. And away we go.
Yeah. So let's move over to offense. Before we do that, I just want to take a quick second to hear from our great sponsors. All right. So on offense, Adam, something that we've been reporting for quite a while is that Brian Johnson was going to be the offensive coordinator. He is the offensive coordinator. I think we even mentioned that Alex Tanny was very likely to then become quarterback's coach. He is now the quarterback's coach. And I guess, let's see. So TJ Pagnetti, he's done a bunch of different. I wasn't he at one point an offensive line assistant. I know he was the quality control coach, run game specialist slash assistant tight ends coach, but this guy's been on the team since Chip brought him in
Yeah,
several
in
years
fact, I
ago.
was going to say he's had all sorts of assistant coaches. So he goes from offensive quality control coach to run game special assistant tight ends coach. That's seen as promotion.
Right.
Brian Johnson, obviously quarterbacks to OC. Then Marcus Brady was helping out on defense. Now he's a senior offensive assistant, and it makes sense with Johnson moving up and them losing Shane Steichen for this to happen to give Brady, who is a guy who's been, man, he was a longtime quarterbacks guy with the Colts. He'd been in the league for a long time. He's a pretty sharp guy. I don't know what happened between him and Frank Reich for Reich to fire him as a non-play calling OC. But I could just talk to the guys who work with him. He's a pretty sharp guy. This is a good move for the Eagles, and good job by Sirianni for bringing him in. Obviously, knew him.
Yeah, definitely. And he's certainly someone you can then look a year or two down the road. If you lose Brian Johnson, if you lose Kevin Patullo, if you lose Alex Tanney, I'm telling you, we hear from coaches about Alex Tanney, they love this kid. So he's now the quarterback's coach. We'll get into that in a second. But, you might lose him the way he's regarded. So Marcus Brady, you have a veteran there, guy who's coached for a while. It was really smart to bring him in. If I'm not mistaken, it was Jonathan Gannon's suggestion. Right? Wasn't he working more closely with Gannon?
He did on the defense, yes. And they both obviously knew him because they worked with him.
Right.
But Brady knew Marcus because he was an offensive coach. Now, as far as bringing him in, yeah, that might have been Gannon, maybe his decision or his suggestion to do it. But this one, obviously, putting him back on offense because of the loss of one coach who was pretty big. Steichen, and then Johnson getting promoted. And two notes also from our sources on Johnson. Steve Wilkes is going to hire him as his OC, we're told, most likely, had he gotten the head coaching job with the Panthers. And then there was another team we talked to this week that said that, another team said that they were looking at him to be the OC, but as soon as they found out that he was going to promote him, they backed off. They just, okay, well, this is not going to happen. Why even call the Eagles? Because they felt that they knew maybe from the agent or someone else. They were pretty convinced. I guess the word gets around when this guy's a pretty good coach, and this is a big job for him now because he called plays at U of F and I think also Utah. I know he was an OC at Utah. I'm assuming he called the plays then. But anyway,
thought it was UF, and I thought it was where was he in Texas? Was he at Houston?
I don't remember, but I think at Utah after he was done playing there, I know he had the title of OC. Maybe he wasn't calling plays then. We definitely know he called him at U of F. That's 100%.
Yes.
But this is a guy who's really respected. A lot of people knew about him. Apparently, he's one of those up and coming risers. And the Eagles, they were smart. They must have known this because they didn't waste any time. It's like this promoting him was like behind the scenes, of course. This was done like really quick.
Interesting.
When they could, obviously, as you noted very well, a couple weeks ago, they still had to interview a couple of minority candidates.
Yeah, so I actually have a note on that. So because it was a little confusing. Nick Sirianni was asked if he interviewed outside candidates, which they had to do to satisfy the Rooney Rule. And I had the note that even if you're planning to promote someone who is a minority coach in-house or female, you still have to do your 2 external interviews with minority or female candidates. Just because you're promoting someone who is minority doesn't absolve you from fulfilling the Rooney Rule. So, which is an important distinction. I don't think a lot of people knew that. In fact, some people who like coaches and they're not familiar 100% with the rule. That is straight from the league that I got. And then so Nick Sirianni said we interviewed. I'm quoting him. We interviewed. I think he got the name wrong, and I'll probably do it too. Nate Schillhouse, who's the quarterbacks coach / offensive coordinator for Iowa State. Nick loves him some Iowa State because of his relationship with Matt Campbell there. So that was an interview, and that he left it at that. So I said, well, wait a minute. It's 2. You have to do 2 external minority candidates. So I went and checked with the league. And they got back to me and said that the Eagles were in compliance. They interviewed 2 people. They have to tell the league who they interviewed. They don't have to tell the public, but they have to tell the league. So clearly there's a reason Nick only mentioned one of the names. It's very possible that the other candidate doesn't want people to know he's got a foot out the door, or doesn't want the perception out there that he's got a foot out the door. He's coaching for another NFL team, doesn't want to hear, because all of a sudden you could hear that you're interviewing for jobs, and if you don't get those jobs because they were already earmarked for somebody else, now you look like you're doing a bad job in interviews, So guys sometimes don't want their names out for those reasons. The college kids, the coaches, they like it when their names are out there because it gives them a little bit of clout. So good for Nate Scheelhaus. He gets a chance to interview for an NFL team. That means he's a rising guy among the college ranks. But I just wanted to clarify that for everyone.
Yeah, very good. He was their OC. He is their OC / quarterbacks coach.
Mm-hmm.
He's a very interesting spelling. Scheelhaase. I've never seen Nate Scheelhaus. Is it Haas or House?
Did he play quarterback at Indiana? Are you reading his
yeah, I don't.
I felt like he was a quarterback at Indiana and then maybe transferred. That name sounded really familiar to me because I thought I keep up on Big Ten football, and that name sounded familiar.
He was a 4-year starter at IU. Yes, good call.
Oh, there you go. Okay,
U of I. I'm sorry, no, U of I, Illinois. The Illini.
Oh, that's what it was. Illinois. Okay.
Yes.
Illinois. I knew it was one of those Big Ten teams that started with I. I just couldn't remember what team.
Boy,
he wasn't bad either. He was all right.
He coached running backs at Illinois and Iowa State, receivers at Iowa State, running game coordinator, running backs, wide receivers in 21, 22, and he just got named as OC and also coached wide receivers. So, by the way, another thing, talking to some college coaches, there are plenty of college coordinators who make more than NFL coordinators, believe it or not.
Yeah, that is true.
So, and who knows what he was making? So,
there you go. So there you go with all of the offensive from. Oh, and I do want to say, I said I was going to add more. Shane Steichen. It's one thing when you have your own head coach say it, and it's like, of course, you're hyping up your own guy. I had already spoken to a couple of people around the league who just knew, because Alex Tanney has been everywhere. He's as a quarterback, and he's been with a bunch of different teams. He has a very good reputation, and Shane Steichen raved about him, and Shane Steichen, who's now the Colts coach, was saying that he's very good at just taking, quarterback position is complex and really making it clear, concise, delivering the message straight. He said his approach to the position and coaching, the profession of coaching is second to none in how he's prepared. So really good words, high words of praise for Alex Tanney, who seems like another kind of rising Eagles coach who I wouldn't be surprised if a year or two we're talking about him as a coordinator somewhere or something.
And by the way, another thing is, as you tweeted the other day, there were so many former personnel guys and whoever from the Eagles are now GMs or coaches. God. In fact, I found and the connections that these guys, it's really remarkable. This is becoming. People make fun of the quarterback factory comment from Roseman, but there's no question, because what happens is the teams see the success that the Eagles have had. They're gonna get rated. That's just the way it is. But the thing is Sirianni's talked about ad nauseum, quite frankly, and it's for a good reason. It's his job to develop these guys. I mean, he coaches hard. He's really on them. That you made a very good point earlier. Because that was, I think, now I don't think I know this to be the case, talking to people close to the situation. One of the things that the downfall of Peterson is his unwillingness to hold his coaches responsible when they were not doing well, and to figure out what they weren't doing well. He didn't know his coaches well enough, or he just was not going to address it. Well, that stuff does not that doesn't happen with this guy.
Right.
Of course, Doug's a very good head coach, by the way. Look, he's doing a great job with Jacksonville. But to go back to here in Philly, there were a lot of reasons why they didn't win in 2020. The roster wasn't very good. Quarterbacking was terrible. All true. But the fact that and obviously he lost some coaches, but the coaches on the staff needed to be developed more, and Doug just did not.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And to your original point, on Tuesday, They did 32 combine interviews, right? And they've got 6 podiums, and they just bring guys in and
Oh,
out.
yeah.
At one point, I'm looking at the podiums. 4 of them are full. Podium 1, Doug Peterson. Podium 2, Jason Light. Podium 3, Brett Veach. Podium 4 was Howie Roseman. So it was like and then when Veach went off, Andy Reid came on, and it was everybody who had been connected to the Eagles all there in a row. And then like an hour later, there were 3 other guys who were connected to the Eagles up on the podiums. It's crazy. It's some kind of factory, all right. So, all right, we got just a few more things. Want to wrap up, but I want to first remind everybody to check out our friends at phlsportsnation.com, enhancing the fans' experience with all their coverage of Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at phlsportsnation.com, on Twitter at phlsportsnation. Let's pause real quick for a word from our friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schulter, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
All right, if you happen to stop into Sky Motor Cars, make sure you tell them that Adam and Jeff sent you. You will get a great deal. All right, you want to just finish up on sort of the rest of the coaching staff here? We do know, yeah. Adam, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, no, I was just to say with linebackers, it's still open, and right. You and I have heard that Desai's looking at someone with experience at linebackers coach. I know you had a note earlier this week.
Yeah. Well, we know that he's looking for. They have a linebackers coach void, and we know that just talking to some people who know Sean Desai or coached with him before that he's got some guys that he's worked with before that would make obvious candidates. One of them was Mike Pettin, who when he was the defensive coordinator for the Bears, Pettin was also with the Bears as like senior defensive assistant. So, but right now Mike Pettin's with the Vikings, and he is the associate head coach or assistant head coach there, which is a pretty big title. So I've heard that the Vikings would like to keep him, and so it would be really difficult. I would think, I'm projecting here, to make a leap from that to go be like senior assistant / linebackers coach, because he has coached linebackers in his past.
Yeah, we talked to a coaching source earlier this week. He said he didn't think he knows Patton. He's pretty close to him. He didn't see it happening.
Okay,
but he totally got it. He goes, look, he goes, if Mike, it's one thing if Mike didn't have the title he had, or the circumstances could be different. But he said he totally gets why they would want, or he would want Desai, an experienced coach who would know his scheme, because Patton has coached in 34 for most of his career. Mm-hmm. I remember him coaching with an odd man fronts with Rex Ryan, who hired him out of high school coaching. Point to the story. And then I think now also, if they don't get the veteran guy, is there someone within the Eagles coaching staff they could look at?
Yeah, one person that I was told was that Nick Sirianni brought in, not Jonathan. Nick Sirianni, again, an Iowa State guy. His name is Tyler Scudder, and right now he's listed as the Eagles coach's assistant. He was at Iowa State. He was a defensive quality control coach, and he did coach linebackers for Duquesne, I think it was, in like 2014 and 2017. So here's a guy that Nick Sirianni, I was told Nick Sirianni really likes him. That's why I brought him in, Iowa State. And he's been on the staff. Now, I don't know if he has enough coaching experience. He's not a young guy. I think he's in his 30s or 40s, but I don't know if he has enough NFL coaching experience where you make him your linebackers coach. I mean, even Nick Rallis, as young as he was, had been the assistant linebackers coach for the Vikings, right, before he came to the Eagles.
Yeah.
This guy,
and he was honestly talking to someone with the Vikings. He was really a quality control coach, defense. He just got the assistant, whoever their linebackers was coaching him.
Okay.
But what I'm saying with Scudder, you never know. Look, in fact, maybe even Scudder, as you said, he had college experience. The jump that Rollis had is amazing. It's really quite remarkable that he's now a defense coordinator under the age of 30. It's we'll see how he does. I know he did a phenomenal job with T.J. Edwards and others. But I give Gannon obviously Gannon was right about him. There's no question. That was a gamble at the time, but it turned out to be a good gamble. Then Scudder is a guy that Sirianni likes, so that maybe he's an in-house candidate if they don't find the experienced guy. And the other one is defensive quality control job. That's the one that Joe Casper had.
Right.
Now the safeties coach for the Dolphins, does that sound right? Safety coach.
Yeah, I thought. Secondary coach or safety? Either way, yeah, he's coaching with Vic Fangio.
Secondary.
Yeah.
In fact, I saw him. It's kind of weird when you notice sometimes when guys change teams. Typically, whether it's a a pullover, sweatpants, whatever the case may be. He had the laptop bag with a little dolphin on him. It's just kind of weird when these guys leave. You kind of have to you have to change the view. I just because he was a young guy when he got hired, and he had been with the Browns many years ago. And then I give them credit. They keep finding these guys, and I just find it interesting. I don't know how well Fangio knew him when he was with the Eagles during his time there as a consultant. But my goodness gracious, to pull him away, they must have connected. I don't know how this happened.
I don't know. I know Gannon was a big fan of Joe Casper. I think we had thought
there you go
a week or two ago, or whenever Gannon got the job, we were saying, "Hey, watch for this guy, Joe Casper, to maybe defect out there to Arizona." And then when Miami hired him, it was like, "Whoa, I guess Vic Fangio was also a big fan of his."
Maybe he beat him to it.
And,
You're right.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's just, they're pretty resourceful. The Eagles are. Sirianni and Roseman and others over the years at finding guys to replace coaches, but not sometimes. Look, Andy Reid went through this though. Keep year after year after year losing so many good assistants. That's what kind of doomed them.
Yeah.
In the end, they lost too many good coaches, and Doug did. They were resilient to a degree. Then at the end, you could just see you'll keep losing your close lieutenants. But what I think Sirianni was talking about, they're going to develop other coaches, and Tanny's the latest one. How long, by the way, before we get out of here, how long has he been an assistant coach? It hasn't been for very long.
Tanny?
Yeah, Alex Tanny.
How long has he been with? He's been with the team for a little bit.
No.
Now.
But how long has he been an assistant doing any coaching?
It was just 2 years ago. Well, last year, the 2022 season, I think, was his first with the Eagles because he joined them in the 2021 off season as a quality control coach. So, right, he's kind of been with the team just for 2 years, basically.
A big jump, man. Yeah. No, but I'm saying in coaching.
Oh, no, that was his first job, I thought,
that's
right?
It. Yeah, in fact, that's it. Because he was with the Giants practice squad at 20, Eagles offensive quality control at 21, promoted to assistant quarterbacks coach and his offensive assistant. Now he's quarterback coach. This is quite the jump, man.
Right. But remember, he was in Cleveland at one point where I think he was with Steichen, and he was in Kansas City at one point when Sirianni was there. So those guys have known him for a little bit,
Yeah.
So, and they rave about him. So it's really interesting. All right. So next pod will be Monday morning, and we will have a full combine wrap up, and we will start to really look at free agency and what to expect. Sure. Got a lot of work to do between now and then. Oh, and I hope everybody's been checking out InsideTheBirds.com. I know we've had, for the first 3 days of the combine, we had at least 17 headlines. As me and Andrew DeCecco, Ben Paul, one of our interns, yourself, Adam, we've all putting content up, and we're going to try to continue to make Inside the Bird sort of your one-stop shop for, all Eagles news, as far as, printed news or written news, whatever, digital news. So we're putting a lot of effort into it. So I hope everybody's checking it out. Bookmark it if you can, InsideTheBirds.com. And with spring training here and the Phillies right around the corner, myself and Frank Close, Phillies insider Frank Close, we're back to doing Powder Blue podcasts. So please subscribe to the Powder Blue podcasts. You can still email me at insidethebirds@gmail.com if you want. Just let me know how you're thinking about it, but how you feel about it. But yeah, we'll be doing pods every week, and we're really looking forward to this season. Obviously, some big expectations. Andrew Painter has got me all, can't wait to see this 6'7" guy throwing 100 miles per hour. coming up with the big club. That would be nice coming up north. And, Trey Turner. So I know you're excited, Adam, being a big
I can't wait. I'm a Phillies fan. Oh, I mean, Painter the other day threw up to 99. That was pretty exciting. Trey, a real leadoff hitter. Thank goodness we don't want to see Schwarber leading off. I couldn't take it any longer. You can't have your leadoff hitter batting below the Mendoza line.
But watch that. Watch with no shift now. Watch his batting average and on-base percentage go up.
You know what sucks? With Harper having the surgery, Tommy John, just think of if he was able to be, because the shift with him is ridiculous. He'll also be great once, well, we hope, obviously when he comes back. But then obviously on your point about all the content on the website, remember, you follow us on Twitter at Inside Birds. We're tweeting out the latest story, so you'll get the if you get the notification, hit the thing so you get notified. Because it'll take you right to the story, which is great. That's the beauty of getting the notifications is you get the stories right away.
That's right. And everyone loved Andrew DeCecco's mock draft 1.0. They thought it was a really good mock draft, not because it was because it was fair, it was objective. They thought it was more balanced than you normally see from an Eagles mock draft. So everybody soak it up. It was a good one, and he'll probably have 2.0 out in a week or so after we get more free agency information.
On Monday, is it Monday? My free agent rankings are going to debut. In fact, a lot of it is based on conversations because we're running names by not only Eagles players, but we're running. How do you see this safety, this corner? Could be any team. It's just for those of you who really, really follow free agency, not just the Eagles, you'll love this stuff. So got a lot of new content coming.
All right, looking forward to it. That's going to do it for this edition of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in the Eagles Intel. As always, we thank you for flying with us inside the birds.